Alright, so this latest chapter of One Piece somehow managed to up the already nerve-wracking stakes of this current conflict. With the previous chapter, Luffy rode into battle atop a now adult dragon Momonosuke as the two now face Kaido. At first, Momonosuke wasn't exactly confident in his ability to take on the beast, despite Luffy's encouragement. However, in the heat of the moment, recounting the pain Kaido had subjected his friends, family, and country to, Momonosuke would heed the words of Luffy and bite the Yonko. As simultaneously, the Mink leaders Nekomamushi and Inuarashi would lose access to their empowered Sulong forms on account of the moon now being obscured from view, placing them both in rather precarious situations against their vengeful adversaries. However, to follow Momonosuke's bravery against Kaido, Luffy would question if anything could possibly scare him again after having bitten a Yonko, to which Momonosuke would respond no and discover his backbone. From here, Luffy would yet again declare to the masses that he would emerge victorious against Kaido, which in tandem with the restored faith in Momonosuke's safety, served to greatly increase morale. From here, the Conqueror's Haki of Luffy and Kaido would again clash. However, this time such a meeting would result in the splitting of the heavens above, a theatrical advent somewhat exclusive to the absolute strongest, the Yonko. And with the sky now clear, the moon was now in full view, which allowed the two Mink leaders to assume their Sulong forms yet again, and with that they were able to take down their respective opponents. With this latest chapter, we would pick up right from where Nekomamushi's battle had concluded, as Perospero was completely laid out, and Carrot would leap to hug her victorious master. Carrot would be warned about accidentally transforming, while Nekomamushi himself would have to question what could have caused such a sudden shift in the weather. And from there we would make our way back to the rooftop as Yamato would recount the adventures of Lord Odin chronicled in his journal, and specifically the clash between Whitebeard and Roger it described. From here, both Yamato and Momonosuke would simply observe in awe as the fist of Luffy and the spiked club of Kaido would repel one another, with Conqueror's Haki rippling around them. This was a serious standoff for sure. Now, the reverberation of this clash had previously incapacitated the Mary observing the battle, but now it was also causing tremors all throughout the rest of the structure. Neither of the two were willing to budge here. However, at this point, Yamato was beginning to feel the ramifications of his battle with Kaido previously, as blood would spill over the eye, as he would now consider himself to be a bit naive to think that he could properly guard against them. But hey, to be able to take that and still be moving is an impressive feat all on its own. I mean, that is the same power that one-shot Luffy when the two first met one another. If Yamato does in fact end up joining the Straw Hat crew as we expect, that will be a massive W. Luffy would then call out to Yamato and tell him to help out Momonosuke, who he was somewhat upset with considering he still had yet to get a complete hold of himself, to which Momonosuke would express that it is hard to break old habits so quickly. But with that, Yamato would climb aboard and apologize for having split up with Momonosuke previously. But now seeing that the two were getting out of dodge, Kaido would rush off and attempt to stop them. With this, a fearful Momonosuke would call out to Kinmon and Kiku to lend him their strength as he leaned over the edge of the roof shakily. Yamato would call for Momonosuke to hurry up as he would fend off the attack of his father in the meanwhile. A battle Yamato was in no condition to handle at the moment, but thankfully, Luffy would stop the Yonko dead in his tracks and wrap his legs around the neck of the beast. From here, Luffy would then call out to Yamato, who immediately knew what he wanted to say. Luffy wanted Kaido all to himself, but as Luffy had a big ol' smile on his face, Momonosuke was plummeting downwards in fear, believing this to be the end. But quickly, Yamato, knowing how Kaido's abilities work, would tell Momo to try and grab hold of the sky, as in reality, dragons don't actually fly, which makes sense considering this is not the depiction of a European dragon with wings. In order to move throughout the air, dragons conjure clouds to be used as footholds, what are known as flame clouds, and knowing this, Momo was able to move freely through the air. But from there, suddenly, several boulders would hurtle towards the two as Yamato would notice and break them apart prior to impact. Onigashima was beginning to fall apart. What was quite the monumental development, as this means that Kaido's power is in fact weakening. Finally, a hint of give from this otherwise indomitable figure. His flame clouds were becoming unstable and were unable to support the bedrock anymore. What Momonosuke surely knew would spell disaster for the people of Wano below, as he would suddenly slam his head into the side of it, claiming to have gotten bigger to protect such a thing from ever happening. Yet to Yamato, these efforts were futile. At this point, Onigashima was only 5 minutes away from touchdown on the mainland. For this reason, Yamato would urge Momonosuke to use his flame clouds in Kaido's stead, as he too was now a large dragon as well, and that this was how Kaido was moving the island to begin with. However, Momonosuke wasn't too sure of himself, considering he had only just learned how to fly, and all of this was new to him. Not to mention, there was no guarantee that his powers would work exactly like Kaido's, but to Yamato, the sheer fact that Momonosuke was able to summon flame clouds at all was more than enough for at least a decent shot. The alternative being that they do nothing and let everyone in the capital be crushed. Furthermore, going on to say that things would be even worse if the clouds were to suddenly leave on account of Kaido faltering, because for such a thing to happen would mean that the island would fall to an even more frightening degree. You see, Wano is currently filled to the brim with weapons and gunpowder. For the island to collide with the surface, the country would essentially become a massive bomb, and they had no means of evacuation that would be swift enough to protect the capital. At this rate, if Onigashima made landfall, it would no doubt explode and utterly destroy everyone, friend and foe alike. And with all these concerns in mind, Momonosuke would suggest that they stop Luffy from fighting Kaido. And to answer this, Yamato would knock Momonosuke over the head, telling him not to be stupid. I'd hope that Momonosuke, after biting Kaido, would be handling things a lot better than this, but at the end of the day, I suppose he is still mentally a child, and so it will be a long while before he is truly changed in that way, if ever, I suppose. I mean, he could just end up being a big ol' Usopp. But yeah, Yamato would then admire Luffy for a moment here by saying that he chose to place everyone's hopes and dreams on his shoulders, even when he himself could barely stand. And so how could they possibly stop him at a pivotal time like this? Luffy was the only one who could possibly stand to defeat Kaido. To tell him of this impending danger would only add to the already incredible burden on his shoulders. They would have to figure things out on their own. But now shifting back to the live floor, King was going buck wild and tearing through any and everything in his way indiscriminately. Zoro would do his best to defend against this assault, but King's attacks would hurl him elsewhere. Here he would catapult into the direction of Franky, who would recognize and subsequently catch him. Zoro would admit that his opponent was plenty strong, not that that was much of a surprise to him. To this, Franky would offer a hand in the fight, but Zoro would refuse. This was a fight he wanted for himself. Meanwhile, King too would have a conversation with a fellow crewmate, as Queen would berate him for having nearly cleaved into him as well during that outburst, which King didn't seem all too bothered by. But at this point, the grunts around them would notice that Zoro had actually managed to cut into King's mask. And this was clearly the reason that King was so angry, as nobody has ever seen King's real face. The All-Star would then begin to approach once more. Zoro would tell Franky to get out of dodge, as King would suddenly fly straight towards Zoro at alarming speeds. Zoro would prepare a counterattack for this. The two would clash, but afterwards it would appear as though Zoro took the losing end of that exchange, as yet again he would be sent flying. Now breaking straight through a wall, Zoro was clearly feeling the pain, but even then, he would see that King did not plan on letting up in the slightest and was coming for another assault. With this, he too would completely crash through the side of the skull. At this point, Zoro was plummeting downwards, but would use a move to cushion the fall. Thankfully, he hadn't completely fallen off the island. However, Zoro was pissed and would tell King that he should at the very least use a blade when he goes for the kill. That what he just pulled was unforgivable. A level of contempt King also felt for Zoro in regards to the unforgivable, as we would now see a bit of King's face exposed through the mask, and that was the chapter. A lot was going on in this one, but wow, to think that Kaido is finally showing some wear and tear is so major. And as if the stakes weren't high enough as is, we now have the threat of the capital being blown up as well. Oda is really not playing around. Now at this point, King's mask isn't all too broken apart, but hopefully as his battle rages on, it will get more and more torn. I am very curious how he will end up looking. This is One Piece after all, the guy could just be horribly goofy looking for all we know, but either way, great stuff as always, and I am already counting down till the next one. Until then, subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on to keep up with all that we do, One Piece and otherwise. And you can stay connected with us and the Plot Army over on social media, and now even Discord with the link in the description, where you'll be able to find early chapter previews and some great discussions overall. Because when it comes to bringing you some of the best One Piece content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I am Sliceable Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.